once you know that, everything makes sense.
Well, Rick Baker is an absolute genius, and he won an Oscar for this, and he said later on that he was bummed that there is CGI in it, but the issue is, Del Toro took 3 hours to get ready. Anthony Hopkins took 3 hours to get ready. These blood gags, these scratch gags, these decapitation gags, they take time. And Rick Baker and his crew, they're perfectionists. So if you have any type of blood gag, werewolf gag, any of those gags, you're going to need to get someone prepared, dressed, ready to go. And I'm not saying this is the best. You shouldn't just we'll do it in post. That's not what you should do. But that's what Joe Johnston had to do to make it go by faster. So he had time. And he had, 2 years in post for this movie?
That's true. It got done in 2008, came out in 2010.
But this is one of those weird cases where the studio fought like tooth and nail to not give Mark Romanek and not give Joe Johnston the extra days. But then what happened was they needed to give them the extra days, and it became more expensive. So I've worked on music videos before where they go, okay, we're going to knock it out in 1 day as opposed to doing 2 12-hour days because it's cheaper. But the issue is, if you shoot for 20 hours, people go on overtime after 12. So 12 to 14, they go to 1.25. Then 14 to 16, then like 1.75, and then from 16 to 20, they're getting paid double their wages. So they walk out with a little bit more than 2 days of pay for 1 day of work because they didn't want to stretch it. And that seems like the case on this, where they had all the ambition in the world, but they were trying to go into it cheaply, and then it cost them an additional $70 million to finish.
That doesn't make any sense.
No, and you know what annoys me too? The head of the studio at Universal said that one of the worst movies we ever made was Wolfman and Babe 2. They are 2 of the shittiest movies we put out. And I think that's kind of BS because at the end of the day, listen, this movie is a fever dream, but it looks beautiful. It looks good and it's well performed. It's cut all over the place, but it's weird that he said that. But I think that's more of their mistake. I mean, you can't give a guy 3 weeks prep and then expect him to shoot a massive script with tons of blood and gags and effects with Rick Baker on time. It's just, and in England too, those are different hours. I mean, you're probably working, like they take breaks, they take tea, you can't overwork people like you do here in America. So it's just a weird, ambitious thing that didn't quite pan out.
Yeah, so I also found that quote, and in preparation for one of us saying it, I made a list of 4 movies that are worse than this movie by far.
Ooh, let's hear
it. You want to hear?
Yeah.
Yeah. How High.
Yeah.
That I try to go back and watch that movie and not shudder with how sexist it is. It's incredibly inappropriate. A movie that we are going to be doing soon, Mark, Van Helsing.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
There is no denying that Van Helsing is worse than this movie. It's still fun, but it's not. This movie's better. Bordello of Blood.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a Universal movie too. And then the final one is Leap Year. And like a lot of movie aggregators always call that one of the worst movies that come out in 2000. I guess it's the aughts.
Do you think he's just sour about how much money they spent on it?
He has to be, because it is not that bad. Like it has its faults, but I enjoyed watching it. I thought it was good.
And for me, there are some movies that I don't really think are good movies, but if they're visually interesting or they swing for the fences and miss, like a lot of people go after the Wachowskis for Jupiter Ascending, but that movie swings. They took a bat and just tried to hit a home run on every shot. And no matter how much people sort of rag on it because of how expensive it was, I still like it because it's insane and it's loaded. And I don't know, I guess I keep saying it over and over, but that's why I keep coming back to this film, because I don't know, there's always something visually interesting for me to look at, and I dig it.
Sidebar with Jupiter Ascending, it's one of my favorite films, and I will defend that movie to death.
I mean, me too. I did a list one time. I'm like, in 2 hours, there's 7 space battles, 3 weddings. Like, there's just 2 nut shots. You could do a list of everything they pack into that film. And it's just glorious. There's, I don't know, bees. There's a city fight. A city gets repaired. There's an entire cleaning of houses. There's a bureaucracy planet. I mean, there's a space orgy. There's just so much in that movie, and they jam-packed it. I dig it. And it makes me, I don't know, I like it. But it just seems, I don't know. It just annoys me that they're ragging on this movie later on when I don't know, I dig it. It's fun. I mean, I'm not going to say it. I was going to go, is it a classic? But can I ask you something, David?
Yeah.
Like, so many people, we've talked about this before, but so like, it's not an Oscar winner, but I mean, actually, this movie is an Oscar winner, but this was just meant to be a gothic film that was fun. Like, I don't think they were swinging to get Oscar nominations for this, and I guess that in general, like, people watch that movie Becky with what's Kevin James, and they're like, well, it's not Oscar worthy, but how often are movies like Becky Oscar worthy? I don't know. That's just my rant. I'll get. I mean,
there's 25 to 30 movies a year that are Oscar worthy.
You know what?
Maybe max 50 out of thousands of movies. Like, the percentage of that is so low.
Exactly, and I don't know. So I think, I don't know. This is so weird. I'm gonna switch gears here. What do you think about Del Toro's Caesar cut in this movie? Do you like it?
I laughed really hard when I saw it. It's weird looking. I thought it was a wig. I don't think it's a wig. I think he just dyed his hair, but it's strange.
I just love, I do dig the Caesar cut. It's just, it looks, but we never get to know Larry Talbot, do we? We know nothing about him.
No, we know that he's not a good actor, despite them saying he is.
Yeah.
Which is actually like a part of it. I read somewhere that was done on purpose. Like, he's not supposed to be a good actor, or he was miscast in the role of Hamlet, and that's what it was supposed to show, but you never quite get that. So it's not that Benicio del Toro was bad acting poorly in that scene, that he was acting as a person who was a bad actor playing Hamlet.
That's fun.
Yeah, we don't get to know him. Like, everything about that character I took from the original Wolfman, and everything I knew about the Universal monster movies, and how that character is tormented by being the Wolfman, and how he doesn't want to be, and he doesn't want to hurt people, and transpose it onto this other character. And that was really probably my biggest critique, is that I just don't know Benicio del Toro's character at all, because he's clearly torn about what's happening, and he has emotions, but when you think about Lon Chaney Jr., like, there's these scenes where he's begging people, like I don't want to turn into a werewolf, and Benicio del Toro's character didn't get that moment. So, like, when he woke up after he killed all those people, he's like hiding in the woods and then is immediately tracked down. You don't see the repercussions of him realizing that he has killed, was it a dozen people?
Yeah. Are they killing him over and over again in that place? Are they trying to cure him? Or are they they're seeing how they can kill him to, like, does that, like, they know he's a werewolf? Or they know he's it's just kind of odd, because they're dunking him in ice water, they're electrocuting him. Are they trying to kill him and have him come back? Are they trying to study him? What are they doing to him in that place?
They're trying to cure him, but this was, the late 1800s, early 1900s?
Yeah.
And that's just, medicine was wild back in the day, right? Like
just dunking him.
Do some cocaine and you'll be happy.
Leech him, blood him,
yeah,
bleed him.
Leech him and do some coke. You'll be great. Dunk them in cold water. They'll reset their nervous system. Yeah, they were trying to cure him because they didn't believe he was a werewolf until he turned into a werewolf and then wrecked the entire the Citad, I guess, or the Academy.
So when he turns into a werewolf, he does not have control. So Anthony Hopkins has control of the werewolf when he comes out, but he does not, correct? But at the end, Gwen kind of talks him into, makes some sense to him, and he stops. Larry stops. But in England, he's just killing people willy-nilly. Is that...
Yeah.
But yeah. Because it was interesting, both Joe Johnston, I read an interview with, there's a really long interview with Harry Knowles and Joe Johnston where essentially they were, Joe's like, I don't have much time on this, so I'm just running and gunning. Every day I got to focus on what I have to do every day. This is really tough. But he said both me and Del Toro, we didn't want our werewolf to be a murderer. We wanted him to be placed in situations. So I guess when he first becomes a werewolf, he tries to run away and goes after a deer. And he's cornered and he has to kill those people. And then when he's put in the sanitarium, he's tied up in front of all the idiot scientists. And then he just goes on a rampage. So, and at the end, he switches to kill his dad. So I guess they did that, but I don't know if that really rings unless you've read it and know that about the character. You know what I mean?
I do, yeah. And I think that's not quite the spirit of the original. Because the original is about a basically good man who's killing people and he doesn't want to, and he can't stop and no one believes him. And this one, it's like a good man maybe a good man who's killing people who are antagonizing him. So it limits sort of the dread and horror of what's happening and focuses more on the gore.
Oh, yeah, it puts it. Yeah, that's interesting. It's not very psychological.
No,
I would say.
no,
like
no.
It's more you idiots, I'm gonna kill you. It's not. Oh wow, that's a good point. Yeah, there's nothing there's no you never witness any inner torment with Larry.
Exactly.
I love saying Larry. Oh my gosh.
Lawrence Talbot.
Yeah.
So I read an interview with Anthony Hopkins about this movie, and right up front, I think this is the most interesting part of it. And he said that he believes The Wolfman is an American story about something that happens in Britain. So I want to just ask you, do you think The Wolfman is an American movie or a British movie?
That's a good point. It's very tied up in Gothic. So I think you tend to look more towards England for that. Do you not? With the kind of Gothic atmosphere?
Mm-hmm. You can look towards American stuff and the older homes on the East Coast and in the Deep South and maybe New Orleans, but it does feel like this whole film really revolves around being in a dark, dangerous place that the Midwest isn't going to cut it.
Yeah, you need the bogs, you need the dark trees, you need the overcast skies. So I guess you could shoot this in the Pacific Northwest. Or, you can't have you could shoot a great werewolf film in Australia, obviously. There's a lot of outback out there, but that's interesting. I don't know. This plot could take place anywhere, though. I think this movie's universal. Could. Hey, Universal, oh brother.
Yeah, but you want it to be in a gothic, dark, and moody atmosphere because that's sort of the vibe of all the other Universal movies. And when I was thinking about this, I would say I think Anthony Hopkins is right. This was written by an American. It was by an American company about something that happened in Britain. And if we wanted to see this happen in America, it would probably, for me, have to take place near New Orleans. And it wouldn't necessarily be a werewolf story, but a story about the loup-garou, which is, it's still a werewolf, but, just a different name.
Mm-hmm. Or in Florida, it could be the swamp ape.
The swamp ape. Yeah, it's so bright. Like I love that everything's like really dreary, and it feels like the set itself is pushing down on people.
They shoot it really well. I don't know if you noticed this though. There's a couple points where I love how dark and moody it is. There's a scene where Hopkins and Gwen are talking. I guess Sir John and Gwen are talking, and it's just beautifully lit. It's sumptuous. But there's other times where on one of the bottom windows, there's a light shooting straight through the window, and it's parallel with the ground. So that's it's not exactly during sunset time. So they did some funky stuff with lighting here to make it look gothic. But I guess it's just another otherworldly feel you want to get. But the lighting isn't exactly the most practical. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, yeah.
They're not using practical lights to create a gothic vibe. They're really molding it, which is totally fine with me, but I did notice that several times. Like, why is that light there?
So Mark, one thing that this movie got me thinking about is what makes a good werewolf movie? What makes a top echelon werewolf film?
I guess if we look at, there's a few that immediately come to mind. And sorry if I'm being super basic here, but you do have the American Werewolf in London. It's a surprise. It's uncontrollable. The first change into a werewolf is painful and brutal, and it's a tough transformation. And I do think it's a sense of dread. It's lurking. And one thing I do love is where in this movie Hopkins just locks himself in a room, and Toro just changes. You don't know what's going to happen, and there's no dread to it. I think there's one where you see the sun coming down, and this is your first. So the audience knows what werewolves can happen, but the character doesn't. And just seeing this person maybe trying to get to safety and not. I just think it involves loss. It involves. It's got to be a painful transformation, at least for me. Practical effects, I think, are necessary, and just a good person going down the drain. I guess that's, for me, is what I like. I don't know. What about you?
I think you hit it. Like my two main points of any werewolf movie is that it has to show a character being tormented. These films are really about a human, devolving into something that's not human. And so I want to see that pain. I want to see them be upset with the things they do. I want